to The Shining and a look at Ovid's classic, The Metamorphoses. The challenge of picking a specific poem from Ovid brought back the oft-asked childhood question, what is your favorite color? When other children would instantly respond with red, blue, pink, I was always stymied and usually responded, I don't have a favorite color. I love too many colors, which then made me feel like an oddball. A lifetime later, that seemed the case once again, having read the Metamorphoses and thinking about a final project. For the past 4 months, it hearkened to the dreaded proverbial term paper. What am I going to choose? Narcissus and Echo, Apollo and Daphne, Diana and Actaeon, Medea and Aeson, Ceyx and Alcyone, a few of my best of Ovid's stories. For me, Ovid's genius is his ability to exploit the range of human relations, drawing the reader into arenas one may never otherwise experience. Fidelity, self-love, silencing, revenge, grief, jealousy, and longing, to name only a few, are played out in moments of quiet intimacy to Olympic grandeur. But there was one story that continued to echo, as fragments of dreams can continue to reverberate long after the dreamscape has ended. And I wasn't altogether clear on why this one story continued to simmer. I may not be completely clear now. Like dreams, The Metamorphoses is a collection of potent stories that moves far beyond human interaction and delves into the forbidding and fascinating realm of the subconscious, a place where both beauty and perfection, depravity and the grotesque coexist. I profoundly believe that Ovid's place in literature is secured by his unfathomable ability to tap into the human psyche with all its labyrinthian mysteries, disturbing behaviors, and creative expressions. So my favorite color is green, and my favorite story is Phaeton. Join me on a tour and let's revisit Phaeton's fateful chariot ride through the heavens. Ovid was writing during a high watermark of an imperial age where spectacle was worshipped. He gives new meaning to the depiction of violence. The story of Phaeton flows from the spectacular with its cataclysmic ending. Ovid offers disturbing, if not prophetic, warnings about human ambition and arrogance, played out in a setting of cosmic order and disorder, resulting in the existential threat of planetary annihilation. Such disregard could not be more relevant to the discussion and response to our 21st century world. Ovid's tragic story occurs early, ending in Book 1 and continuing in Book 2. It just so happens that the story of Phaeton is the single longest story out of 250 in the Metamorphoses. It appears that the story held significance for Ovid personally. Phaeton, whose name means shining, and thus the title of today's tour, is the boastful son of the Titan Helios. When his paternity is challenged by Epiphus, the son of Io and Jupiter, Phaeton asks his mother for proof that the sun is his father. She tells him to go and ask his father himself. Phaeton travels to the glittering palace from which the sun starts his journey every day in the east. As an indulgent father, and to offer proof, Helios grants Phaeton anything he desires. He instantly regrets what he pledged when Phaeton asks to ride in his father's golden chariot. Phaeton is not dissuaded by his father's report of terrors of the monsters in the sky, the wild beasts of the signs of the zodiac. Helios reluctantly allows him to mount his chariot, giving him careful instructions not to drive the horses too hard and not to travel on too high or too low a course. We will return to this theme later in our tour. Phaeton mounts the chariot, but the horses, not recognizing their usual charioteer, gallop out of control. Phaeton panics completely when he comes up against the menacing and poisonous claws of Scorpio, and his wild ride now brings him too close to the earth, on which mountains burn and rivers dry up from the heat of the sun. Mother Earth appeals to Jupiter to save the world from returning to the primeval chaos from which it had emerged in Ovid's earlier story of creation. Jupiter responds by hurling his fatal thunderbolt at Phaeton, who plummets like a falling star into the river Po. The river nymphs give him a burial and a tomb. Phaeton is mourned by his mother and sisters, the Heliads, who, as they grieve, are metamorphosed into poplar trees on the banks of the river, forever weeping tears of resin, which harden into golden amber. The grieving father is persuaded by Jupiter and the other gods not to plunge the world into a perpetual eclipse. And that is the myth of Phaeton in a nutshell. Having completed a first reading of the Metamorphoses, and without having read academic analysis of his work, I have formed the following observations. Not all of Ovid's stories carry warnings, morals, lessons, or prophecy. Some appear to have been written for sheer entertainment value and epic imagery. Other stories display Ovid's creative genius in painting fresh stories of ancient gods and humans. Others take on a form of didactic storytelling, informing his readers, beware. Others appear as a writer's attempt to secure his legacy, and still others appear absent any moral at all. The story of Phaeton is a lavish poem, abundant in themes both on a cosmic as well as personal scale. Let's all enter our Phaeton chariot and begin our tour by focusing on 3 select artworks and 3 musical compositions inspired by this epic story. Our first tour stop, North Yorkshire, England, in the civil parish of Henderskelth, as we drive up to Castle Howard, a 17th century place of architectural grandeur. We will be viewing a pictorial epic painting floating above our mere mortal heads as we enter the Grand Hall. Some of you may recall Castle Howard by another name made famous in the landmark mini-series Brideshead Revisited, based on the novel of the same name. It was the home of the fictional Marshmain descendants, an aristocratic Roman Catholic British family caught in the English crosshairs of a turbulent period from the 1920s through the 40s. Castle Howard began in real under the first Earl of Carlisle, Charles Howard. The building began in the late 1600s and took over 100 years to complete, spanning the lifetime of 3 earls and 8 generations of the Howard family. Sir John van Brugge, the architect, created an English Baroque monument exploiting architectural mass, volume, and perspective in ways others of his time had not yet attempted. Within the Great Hall, the castle's main entrance, dramatic elements of terror and architectural feats are conjoined. The inspiration of Van Brugge was a nod to the Palace of the Sun, the lofty abode of Phaeton's father. The Grand Hall, with its soaring pillars, elaborate workmanship, and exotic marbles, surrounded by the 4 continents, 12 signs of the zodiac, and the 4 elements, creates its own architectural oeuvre, reflecting the entire cosmos. The Dome of Heaven, towering above the Great Hall, contains a painting depicting the fall of Phaeton. From conception to execution, the architect Van Brugge bids us on a journey into the sublimity of the mythical Palace of the Sun, suspended in the heavens with its dazzling gold, ivory, and silver, along with the sublimity of Phaethon's terrifying ride through those heavens. The Venetian artist Giovanni Antonio Pellegrini created the painting on Castle Howard's Great Dome, depicting Phaeton. The ethereal climax of Ovid's story takes place 7 stories above those standing in the Great Hall, looking heavenward. Phaeton is captured at the moment of his dizzying plunge to earth. The artist Pellegrini captured the turbulent chaos as if the dome has been turned into a giant tornado. Phaeton has been pitched out of his golden chariot with knees tucked and his billowing red cape. A stable of Helios horses is also flailing in mid-flight. Notice the detail of the reins loosely flapping, wrested from Phaeton's hands. The palette is brightly illuminated, with soft pastels enveloping the action. the horrifying moment is softened, diffused, and contained. Pellegrini imparts a Baroque flourish to the harsh fate of Phaeton's demise, a young man who is clearly bitten off more than he could chew. Pellegrini sidesteps Ovid's description of the tumult, the cities burning below, forests bursting in flames, earthquakes convulsing, food for humankind smoldering. Rather, the artist paints the warmth of Ovid's epitaph. Here Phaeton lies, his father's charioteer. Great was his fall, yet did he greatly dare. Through Pellegrini's depiction, I believe we are reading a eulogy in art. Ovid's words correspond closely to the notion, for all who aim for the Empyrean and miss, such are exonerated from the charge of being feeble or smug. Pellegrini resurrects Phaeton's failure by the maxim that to miss a high aim is to fail without shame. We shall see later in our tour how vastly different Pellegrini's eulogy compares to another great. The fall of Phaeton has been captured in countless works of art, which leads us to our second tour stop as we leave Yorkshire and travel to London and the British Museum. Here we will see a vastly different work on every level from the painting in Castle Howard. This next work reveals a highly finished drawing, absent color, of Phaeton. The composition is presented in three distinct groups. At the top, a youthful, beardless Jupiter sits astride his eagle, twisting his body as he prepares to hurl his lightning bolt. At the center of the drawing, Phaeton, his chariot, and 4 horses plummet to earth. And the lower sketch reveals Phaeton's 3 sisters, the Heliads, lamenting their brother's fate. They provide the metamorphoses, transforming into poplar trees alongside Cycnus, the swan. Reclining at the left is the god of the river Eridanus, and the resting place into which Phaeton fell. A primary player in this triptych story is conspicuously absent: Phaeton's father, the sun. This trilogy fast-forwards the story's frames, highlighting the hidden lesson. Would that Phaeton have learned that great acts take great preparation, time, and wise counsel. The haste of youth set Phaeton headlong on a crash course, paying the ultimate price: his demise. The artist of our drawing, as you may have guessed, is none other than Michelangelo. The highly finished drawing, completed in 1533, was a present for the young man to whom Michelangelo was passionately devoted, Tommaso de' Cavalieri. From correspondence, it is known that Michelangelo gave this as a present to the young man to whom he was passionately devoted. Tommaso acknowledged receipt of the drawing in a letter to Michelangelo, reporting that he was grateful and that the Pope and Cardinal Medici had both seen the sketch and both approved. From correspondence, the drawing bore fatherly advice for Tommaso as he started on his journey through life. Michelangelo taking on the role of Phaeton's father, the sun. It also carried Michelangelo's feelings of unworthiness in his devotion. His letters speak to a presumptuousness in daring to love Tommaso. Think of Phaeton taking command of the golden chariot. The risk was extraordinary, given Michelangelo's fame and the watchful eye of the church. Phaeton's hubris was something the artist shared. The vertical axis of the drawing is ordered in the same manner as his Last Judgment in the Sistine Chapel, giving the composition a fateful, if not pitiless, quality and resonating apprehension. Take heed. Michelangelo's artistry is an ode to his love to treat thyself with awe and preserve thyself. For our third tour stop, we will depart London and travel west to the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., in today's fateful journey of Phaeton, paying a visit to the Flemish great, Peter Paul Rubens. The master's depiction parallels a great many other works, which we will not be referencing, as it appears to capture the violent collision, the moment of loss of control by Phaeton, and the moment of recapturing control by Jupiter's thunderbolt. The result is the chief deity sparing the complete annihilation of humanity, and an act of self-preservation borrowing from Nordic mythology, thwarting the immolation of the gods themselves. In rendering the myth of Phaeton, Rubens comes close to the moment of resurrection in the biblical art world. This is the express moment of salvation, Jove fulfilling the role of Salvator Mundi. This composition could not stand in starker contrast to Pellegrini's soft and airy painting in Castle Howard. The color palette moves from soft corn silk yellow and teal tones in the top of the composition to a foreboding and saturated palette in the lower half, laced with vermilion and carmine red. And that thunderbolt shaft of lighting adding to the drama and quite literally ripping through the action. Rubens' Phaeton snares Wagner's musical color in Götterdämmerung, the twilight of the gods. While the action is taking place in the heavens, the scene echoes the chaos taking place on the earth below, though we only catch a fleeting glimpse. In the lowest right corner of the painting, the earth is covered in a raging fire. Ovid describes the tumult as Phaeton careens out of control between the firmament below and the scorching sun. Hurtling the chariot where no road had run, and now they climb to the highest heaven, now plunge sheer in breakneck descent down to earth. Scalding clouds steam, the parched fields crack deep, all moisture dried, and every summit flames. The calcined meads lie white, the leaf dies burning with the bough, and the dry corn its own destruction feeds. These are but trifles. Mighty cities burn below with all their ramparts, realms and nations turn to ashes. Etna burns immense in twofold conflagration. Olympus flames, and the airy Alps and cloud-not-capped Apennines. The world on every side ablaze. As we gaze at the painting, Jupiter's thunderbolt illuminates the horror on the faces of Phaeton, the horses, and other figures, as the whole cascades like a waterfall. The butterfly-winged female figures represent the hours and seasons who react in terror. The great astrological circle that arches the heavens is disrupted. The assemblage of bodies forms a diagonal oval in the center, arranged so as to assist the viewers travel continually around the centrifuge. While the action is exploding on every inch of canvas, Rubens' real player in the painting is not Phaeton, or the whirling horses, or any other point of action. Rather, the artistic focal point is more subtle, even attenuated. It is the shaft of light, diffuse, receding to the back of the stage as the drama plays out. And yet, this golden streak running through the middle of the composition, from the top right to the illuminated white horse in the lower left, is the star of Rubens' epic work. It represents the very element of Ovid's story which Phaeton deserted as he mounted the golden chariot for his final ride. In his desperate need to prove sonship, the heir to the sun god creates his own solar eclipse, a blindness to the guiding principle given to him by his father. Rubens' masterful depiction of the streak of light dividing this painting is that guiding principle, the Medio Tutussimus, the Vita Media, the middle way. His father's parting words to his son before his flight, and with a heavy heart and many a sigh that told of grief to come, addressed the boy. If this advice at least you will obey, spare, child, the whip and rein them hard. They race unurged. The tasks to hold them in their zeal, Avoid the road direct through all 5 zones. Beware alike the southern pole and the northern bear. Keep to this route, my wheel tracks there show plain. Press not too low, nor strain your course too high. Too high, you'll burn heaven's palaces. Too low, the earth. The safest course lies in between. Hold in the middle, or take my counsel, not my chariot, while you may. But Phaeton mounted, light and young and proud. Ovid captures a prescription that Aristotle gave to his students several hundred years earlier. Following the middle way has been repeated throughout history by philosophers, religions, kings, and queens. Through light and shadow, Rubens brilliantly captures the fulcrum upon which Phaeton's disaster rests. Let us depart from Rubens and continue our tour looking at Phaeton through another art form, that of music. Though many composers have threaded themes of Phaeton into music, we will look at 3 compositions spanning over 300 years. We will leave Washington in our chariot and head back east to France for our first musical tour stop to visit a selection by Jean-Baptiste Lully, a French Baroque composer in the 17th century. Like all the arts of the French court in the 17th century, opera was a political affair. The tale of Phaeton and his father, the Sun King, was composed by Jean-Baptiste Lully at the height of power of the human Sun King, Louis XIV. Ovid's tale, combined with Lully's opera, sent clear parallels to its first audience at the Sun King's court, and was first performed at none other than the Palace of Versailles. Let's enter the Palace of the Sun King to hear a small segment of Lully's opera. As you listen, the real attraction comes from the brilliantly realized orchestral sound. It is wonderfully juicy throughout, oozing Baroque character, and it always has a particular French spring to its step. The perpetual rhythmic vitality. Remember, we are led by flying horses through the heavens. It also serves as a useful reminder of how important ballet was to all the French arts at this time. Ballet would have been performed within this opera. The theme Lully chooses to build upon is that of acceptability, structure, and order, to not exceed one's station in life, and at no time to eclipse the real Sun King, not the mythical one. Lully's music flawlessly blends the voice of the violin, harpsichord, bassoon, viola, and oboe into a silken refrain, a perfect structure that still moves, still travels, yet all the while echoes Helios' admonition to maintain control, to restrain forces, as Jupiter was forced to exercise absolute control and spare the palace of the sun. Lully's music sends a clear message of the importance of self-control and moderation, something Phaeton was unable to attain. Jupiter's role and Lully's music were not lost on the divine right of the Sun King and his court. As we depart the Palace of Versailles, let's head back to England, making a short trip to Suffolk, and pay a visit to the British composer Benjamin Baron Britten on our Phaeton tour. Contrasting with Lully's long and very Baroque opera, Britten's musical composition stands as not much more than musical punctuation. The piece is simply titled Phaeton, Opus 49. A singular instrument, the oboe, stands in as Phaeton and perfectly captures his cocksure defiance and youthful ignorance. You can picture him skipping into the gleaming palace of the sun like he owns the place, his father sitting on his emerald-encrusted throne, the proverbial spoiled little rich boy. This would be the music playing in his mind as he makes his innocent, yet utterly oblivious request of his father. Helios responds to his son's brash and impetuous request to take his father's priceless car for a spin. Dangerous is your choice. You seek a privilege that ill befits your growing years, and strength so boyish still. Mortal your lot, not mortal your desire. This to which even the gods may not aspire. And all the while, as Phaeton naively rejects his father's vital counsel, likely not hearing a word, this tune drowns out his father's ominous warning like a child's whimsical whistle. Let's depart Suffolk, England, for our tour's final destination, the province of Île-de-France, and the City of Light, Paris, to pay a visit to the 19th century French composer Charles Camille Saint-Saëns, who wrote a symphonic tone poem called Phaeton, Opus 39, written in 1873, some 200 years after his predecessor, Lully. The bold, brash opening chords and scales of Saint-Saëns' composition capture perfectly Phaeton's pride and sense of power upon taking control of the golden chariot. The arpeggiated chords in the lower strings roiling through the orchestra over timpani rolls indicate the first hint of unsteadiness in Phaeton's driving of the chariot. But he steadies himself. He forcefully renews his resolve to control the chariot at a blustery cadence. An achingly beautiful and very French melody in the strings, derived from the heroic theme, seems to provide a tragic commentary on the situation. Perhaps Phaeton's resigned parents look on in sadness as his fate plays out before them. The music conjures up images of Phaeton's acquiescent face as the gravity of his mistake is realized. The most thrilling episode of the tone poem, the chariot out of control, threatening to scorch the earth. Jupiter charges his lightning and strikes. Lightning and thunder are convincingly illustrated by the piccolo and percussion. We can almost imagine the pieces of the chariot floating down in a cloud of debris. As everyone moves slowly away from the scene, the Heliads bury Phaeton's body, singing a lament based on his heroic theme, but in a minor key. The grieving mood is tangible. A headstrong youth destroyed by a brash decision and paying the ultimate price. And the City of Light, our final tour stop, bid farewell to your golden chariot, which has brought you back safe. While we have come to the end of our Phaeton tour today, we have only peeled but a few layers of the story's timeless depth. The quest for identity can be a treacherous path. Youthful daring is to be prized and feared. The internal conflict of hubris can lead to catastrophe and trauma. Honoring and heeding collective wisdom can guide and guard. The demand for proof can be a fool's errand. Restraint and respect sustain Mother Earth. Nature, if disregarded, will always have the last word. Poor choices can hurt and harm those we love. The middle way may be the counterweight to a polarized world. The myth of Phaeton's youthful daring and tragedy is referenced in 4 of Shakespeare's dramas, captured by the greats of Homer, Aeschylus, and Euripides. It has inspired countless other writers, composers, and artists for thousands of years. As long as humans exist, the pantheon stands, Mother Earth endures, and the gods frolic in the fiery, weightless vault of heaven. Ovid's Phaeton will inspire and instruct.